Let's test cheap versus expensive tea bags. So starting with a 1-minute brew test, we can see that expensive manages to brew a little bit faster than cheap does, getting a slightly darker colour in the 1 minute. On a longer brew milk pour test, we can see that cheap actually has a slightly darker colour than expensive, although it looks slightly greyer, whereas expensive has a slightly browner colour overall. Take a closer look at the tea bags to try and understand what's going on. We can see that cheap has a fine mesh, where expensive has uniform squares. Now moving on to our most important test, our biscuit dunk sogginess test, we can see that expensive manages to be less soggy than cheap, and I'm actually not sure exactly why that is, but it does have less floppiness. Moving on to trying to make a quiet brew just for ourselves so no one asks for one, we can see that expensive does a little bit worse than cheap, which was slightly louder. Moving on to which one stays warmer longer test, and we can see that expensive, interestingly, seems to have a colder temperature reaching up to the higher points than cheap does. And again, taking a closer look at the actual tea itself, this could possibly be because the tea particles are actually much larger on expensive than what you find on cheap. And finally, moving on to doing another activity while drinking the tea function test, we can see that they both perform fairly equally. I honestly couldn't tell much of a difference, but factoring price to overall product, cheap wins. Very cool.